Thanks for stopping by. Let me share something many drivers don't realize. Almost 1 in 4 cars on the road today has hidden suspension problems. These issues often cost thousands of dollars each year to fix. The worst part? Most people only find out when it's already too late. A bad suspension doesn't just drain your wallet, it can also put your safety at serious risk. But don't worry. Today, I'm going to walk you through 20 easy tips to keep your suspension strong, safe, and smooth. Stick around because some of these tips, especially the last one, could help you avoid expensive repairs altogether. Let's start with a simple trick that many drivers actually do wrong. This mistake is a big reason why their suspension keeps breaking down. The first tip is all about what you do just before hitting a bump or pothole. You need to let your suspension breathe. What does that mean? Well, if you're braking right when you hit a pothole, it's like telling your suspension to take a hard hit while being restrained. When you brake, the weight of your car shifts forward, sometimes by almost 1,000 pounds. This causes the suspension to compress, which means it can't move freely to absorb the shock. Because the suspension is already compressed when the tire hits the hole, the wheel can only slam straight into the edge of the pothole. That impact is very harsh and can damage parts like your ABS sensors, bushings, or even bend your rims. Tests show that the force on the wheel hub can spike to 40 to 50 Gs. That's huge. Just one fast bump into a pothole can lead to repair bills of around $600. Here's the simple fix. Release your brake about 1 second before you reach the bump. This lets the suspension rebound and absorb the impact properly instead of taking the hit while compressed. It's a tiny habit that can save you a lot of trouble. Next, let's talk about bump stops. These are small rubber plugs, about the size of an old film canister, that act as the last line of defense for your suspension. They sit between the suspension parts and prevent metal-on-metal contact when your suspension bottoms out. If your bump stops are worn or missing, the impact from hitting a pothole or dip can go straight into expensive parts like struts, control arms, or even your car's frame. Bump stops tend to wear out quietly over time, especially if you live in places with salty roads or near the ocean. Usually they start to break down after 60,000 to 80,000 miles. You won't get a warning light, but you might hear strange noises, a clang or a dull thud when going over bumps. Ignoring these sounds can lead to serious damage, like warping your shock towers or bursting your strut seals, which can cost over $1,000 to fix. So it's a good idea to check your bump stops regularly and replace them if they look worn out. They're inexpensive, but protect some of the most costly parts of your suspension. Whenever you remove a strut from your vehicle, it's a smart move to replace the bump stops at the same time. These small parts usually cost between $10 and $30, and since the strut is already taken apart, the labor to swap the bump stops is basically free. Think of it as inexpensive insurance to protect your costly $1,500 suspension system. It helps keep your ride smooth and comfortable, especially when you hit rough or bumpy roads. Keeping your suspension joints properly lubricated is another key step that many people overlook. Believe it or not, a tiny neglected joint can cause serious problems, even making your wheel come off while driving at 40 mph. These joints usually fail not because of old age, but because they dry out from lack of regular greasing. This simple task often gets forgotten during routine oil changes. Ball joints and tie rods are responsible for keeping your wheels perfectly aligned, but they are located just inches from the road. That means they're constantly exposed to salt, dirt, water, and grit, which can damage the protective seals. When those seals crack or split, dirt gets inside and turns the grease into a rough, grinding paste. At that point, metal parts start to wear down rapidly. Luckily, if your car has grease fittings, called zerks, a $20 grease gun can become your secret weapon. With just a quick squirt of fresh grease, you flush out dirt and add protection, extending the life of these important joints. Mechanics and fleet operators rely on this easy routine, and it's why some trucks can run 200,000 miles on their original suspension parts. Before winter comes, it's important to protect your suspension from road salt, which can quietly eat away at vital components, like termites chewing through wood. This damage isn't just cosmetic. Rust can weaken control arms, seize fasteners, and even cause springs to snap, often without making a sound. Fortunately, you can stop this destruction before it starts with a quick spray of rust inhibitor. In areas where winter salt is common, mechanics see this damage daily. A simple $10 bolt can break and end up costing you $1,800 in labor to fix. Research shows that corrosion-related suspension failures cost American drivers nearly $3 billion every year. Even warmer states face this risk now, as salty brine is spread on roads before the first snow. The best way to prevent this is by applying a rust-blocking spray, like fluid film or WD-40's corrosion inhibitor, to your coil springs, bolts, and control arms once a year, ideally every fall. These lanolin-based sprays stay sticky all winter, creep into tiny seams, and repel moisture. Taking 10 minutes for this yearly spray can save you from expensive, unexpected repairs later on. Rubber parts in your suspension also deserve careful attention, as neglecting them can lead to costly repairs. A small squeak from a control arm could turn into a $900 fix. Many people don't realize how much of their suspension relies on rubber components, things like steering seals, sway bar links, CV boots, and bushings. These parts stay silent until they dry out, harden, and finally fail, sometimes much faster than you expect. Heat, ozone, road salt, and even sunlight slowly degrade rubber parts long before metal components wear out. For example, a $10 rubber bushing can cause your car to slide unexpectedly or damage a $500 steering rack if it fails. To keep rubber healthy, use a plasticizer that's safe for rubber a couple of times a year. Never oil or WD-40. Products like AT205 penetrate the rubber to reverse damage caused by heat and ozone, effectively doubling the lifespan of these vital parts and saving you hundreds of dollars on repairs. It's also important to keep an eye on your vehicle's ride height. Over time, springs lose some of their height silently and steadily, especially after regular oil changes. Even a loss of half an inch can cause uneven tire wear, steering that drifts off-center, and alignment problems. Unfortunately, many drivers don't notice until they need new tires. Alignment specialists know that every inch your car sags changes the camber angle by about 1 degree. In just 5,000 miles, this can wear down the inside edge of your tires, and once the tread is gone, it can't be fixed. Measuring the distance from the center of your wheel to the fender arch each season and recording the numbers helps you spot problems early. If one side tilts or one corner dips more than a quarter inch, it's time to check your springs. This quick, simple check can save you hundreds of dollars and a lot of hassle. When it comes to shocks, many drivers wait too long to replace them because worn shocks don't make loud noises. They just cause subtle changes you get used to, like the front of the car dipping during braking or a floaty, unstable feeling on the road. But old, worn shocks can increase your stopping distance by as much as 25 feet once they reach 50,000 to 60,000 miles. In an emergency, that extra distance could mean the difference between a crash and a safe stop. Worn shocks also interfere with safety systems like ABS and electronic stability control, which rely on good tire contact with the road. When your tire briefly lifts off the pavement after hitting a bump, these systems can lose effectiveness. This can lead to expensive repairs, including uneven tire wear, damaged bushings, loose steering, and poor braking performance. The best strategy is to replace all 4 shocks or struts proactively around 60,000 miles, even if they aren't making noise yet. This approach, common in European workshops, resets your suspension and keeps your car handling tight and stable like new. When your car is lifted for repairs, be careful about how the suspension bolts are tightened. If bolts on control arms or trailing arms are torqued while the wheels are hanging in the air, the rubber bushings are twisted unnaturally. This twist puts constant strain on the rubber as you drive, causing premature wear, squeaks, and misalignment. Sometimes, this even causes one end of the car to sit higher than the other. To avoid this, always tighten suspension bolts when the car is back on the ground or supported at normal ride height. This simple 10-minute step helps protect your tires, keeps your steering precise, and doubles the life of your bushings. If you plan to store your vehicle for weeks or months, don't just jack it up and leave the wheels hanging. This puts constant tension on the suspension bushings, which are made of bonded rubber and aren't designed to stretch for long periods. It's like pulling a rubber band tight and leaving it that way until it breaks. Instead, support the suspension by placing blocks under the axles or control arms so the car sits at normal ride height. Professional fleets and even museums use this method to prevent early bushing failure, squeaks, broken alignments, and leaky struts. Taking just 15 minutes to do this can save you from a surprise $1,600 repair bill later. Using low-profile tires with large rims might look stylish, but they can silently damage your suspension every mile you drive. The thin sidewalls on these tires used to absorb road shocks and protect your suspension parts. Now, with less rubber to cushion impacts, your shocks, bushings, and wheel bearings take the full force from potholes and bumps. Plus, bigger wheels weigh more, which stresses your struts and bends alignment angles. Bearings wear out faster, and you risk losing control. Shops often see damaged bushings, worn bearings, and leaking shocks on cars with big wheels by 40,000 miles. The solution is simple. Stick close to the original tire and wheel sizes recommended by the manufacturer. If you love the look of big rims, choose forged wheels and keep sidewall height above a 45 series. This way, you avoid paying a hidden $5,000 style tax, your car rides smoother, and your suspension parts last longer. Always replace suspension components in pairs. Replacing only one shock, strut, or spring might seem like a way to save money, but it often leads to uneven handling, strange bouncing, and tires wearing unevenly just a few thousand miles later. That's because new suspension parts are firmer and work differently than old ones with worn bushings and sagging springs. The imbalance stresses the new parts, causing them to fail sooner. Drivers who try replacing just one side often come back later needing to replace the other, plus a new alignment, and sometimes new tires. Data from shops shows it's cheaper and smarter to replace both sides at once. This keeps your ride balanced, prevents early failures, and ensures your tires wear evenly. A small fluid leak can silently destroy your suspension. Engine oil, power steering fluid, and transmission fluid soften rubber bushings very quickly, sometimes in weeks rather than years. This causes suspension joints to become mushy, leading to tire scuffing, misalignment, and even strange braking behavior. Mechanics see this often, and a tiny $12 hose leak can cause $1,000 worth of damage. To protect your suspension, check for leaks regularly, wipe down suspension arms during oil changes, and clean off any spilled fluids with brake cleaner. This little habit acts like rust-proofing, but for your entire suspension system. Avoid turning your steering wheel all the way to the stop. That loud clunk or murmur you hear means you're pushing the axle's constant velocity joints beyond their limits. When you turn the wheel fully, the rubber boots stretch and can tear, especially in cold weather when rubber becomes brittle. A torn boot lets dirt in and grease out, causing the joint to grind itself apart. And all for gaining about 1 extra inch of turning radius. By simply backing off the wheel slightly from full lock, you protect the joints and can save yourself up to $2,000 in axle and sensor repairs. Even small details matter, like fixing chipped paint on your coil springs. What seems minor can quickly lead to rust, which eats through the spring wire until it breaks. Broken springs don't just sag, they can actually puncture your tires, causing dangerous blowouts. This is a common cause of tire failures in snowy, salted regions, monitored by safety authorities every year. To prevent this, clean off any rust or chipped areas, apply a rust converter, and then paint the springs with flexible, protective paint. For extra protection, cover the bottom coils with a sleeve. This simple $10 fix can save you hundreds of dollars on spring and tire repairs.